Your insiders are Bob, Dreger, and Pierre. And gentlemen, we're finally at the stage where we can start talking about real playoff possibilities. Not finalized, not approved, but realistic scenarios. Here's the way it could look. 24 teams would get in, 12 from each conference. The top 4 teams in each conference, when play was halted, would get a bye through the play-in round. The next 8 would meet in best-of-5 series. So in the West, number 5 Edmonton versus number 12 Chicago, Nashville versus Arizona, Vancouver, Minnesota, Calgary versus Winnipeg. Now, if the top 4 seeds stay the same, the winner of Edmonton versus Chicago would play Dallas, and so on. But the top 4 seeds would not be sitting around during this play-in round. They would play their own round robin. What's yet to be determined is whether or not the seeding could change based on those games. Over to the East, it would be Pittsburgh versus Montreal, Carolina Rangers, Islanders, Florida, and Toronto versus Columbus. So again, if the top 4 seeds don't change, then Pittsburgh-Montreal winner would play Philadelphia, the Toronto-Columbus winner would play Boston, and so on in a best-of-7 first-round playoff series. Having digested all of that, what happens next to make this happen, Pierre?
Well, James, the NHL is waiting to hear back from the NHL Players Association, perhaps as early as Friday. In the meantime, the NHLPA's executive board, the 31 player reps, have a call scheduled for 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursday night, at which point they'll discuss this format that we're discussing. Now, whether or not it leads to an actual vote on that call, or whether it leads to a vote throughout the weekend, or if it goes to a player-wide vote across the league, those are all options on the table, as is the players coming back with tweaks of their own to the National Hockey League, which obviously would further extend this process. But if and when there is an agreement on a format, and we're obviously inching closer here, the National Hockey League is going to want to get that out there. They will want to make an announcement once it's official, even though there are all kinds of other issues that haven't been figured out. What the NHL will not share, however, is when the games will resume exactly. They're not ready to commit to dates yet. So when there's an announcement, we'll get the what, we will not get the when.
Well, you're right, Pierre. I mean, there is no rush in terms of making a decision or confirming the hub cities. It's believed that the NHL is leaning towards 2 hub cities. There's still a good amount of cities in the mix. You look at the 3 Canadian possibilities, Vancouver, Toronto, and Edmonton. There's no question that the city of Edmonton, the province of Alberta, certainly is putting a political push behind its want to host and be one of those 2 hub cities. The Edmonton Oilers and the city of Edmonton are presenting a lifestyle card, if you will, to give players an indication what they can expect. You know, if Vegas is a front runner, as most believe, in July and August, it's 40+ degrees Celsius in Vegas. It's really, really hot. It's not that in Edmonton. It's 20 to 25 degrees. So maybe they secure a golf course for the players. They've got the ice district, so they've got huge, big screens outdoors. They can watch other games. They can watch movies, indoor screens at Fort Hall. At Rogers Arena, they've got at least 12 separate dining areas for the individual teams. So there's a whole lot of work that's continuing to make this a reality in Edmonton.
NHL GMs are still somewhat in the dark in terms of what's coming down the pike, but they've got still a decent idea, like a lot of us do, what that may look like. And I would say many of the GMs I've talked to are pretty lukewarm at best about it, but as I said, they know it's coming. The number one reason, the number one complaint that I've heard from general managers is that this format distances itself too much from the NHL regular season. We'll use the Montreal Canadiens as an example. At the pause, the Canadiens had about a 1% chance of making the playoffs. Now, with a play-in round of a best-of-5 against the Pittsburgh Penguins, is that number 30, 40, 50%? It doesn't matter, but it's a much bigger number than 1%. There's also some GMs feel like this is really a made-for-TV event, which it is, because there's no fans in the stands, but they're kind of chuckling a little bit at Chicago and the New York Rangers being a big part of this for obvious TV reasons. Some of the GMs I talked to don't like the fact that they're continuing with bracketing. Now, we've had bracketing in the Stanley Cup playoffs for quite some time, but they thought this would be a year where reseeding would make more sense. And use an example, the Montreal Canadiens, if they did knock the Pittsburgh Penguins off in that play-in round, they wouldn't get the top seed in the East. They would get the number 4 seed in the East, and some teams think that's unfair. The other big question, no answer right now, what happens to the draft lottery? We've got 7 teams that are not in this 24-team format. Those 7 teams would be in the draft lottery. What about the Montreal Canadiens? If they beat the Pittsburgh Penguins in the play-in, are they still in the draft lottery, or does Pittsburgh go to the draft lottery? That's a question a lot of GMs want an answer for.
This is confusing enough, and format's just one of the many hurdles they have to get over as far as returning to play, still testing and safety, all to be determined.